Today I'm going to be demonstrating a fairly quick rendition of an old red barn in a late summer setting. I'm going to be working on a cold press watercolor block of 300-pound weight Kilimanjaro paper. This allows me to apply a lot of water and a lot of color without it buckling. Now I'm going to lightly sketch out the outline of my shapes, and I'll be ready to start painting. I'm going to apply a wash of clear water on the sky portion, avoiding the roof area. This allows the paint to flow evenly when I start applying pigment. Please note that I have the top portion of my painting propped at a slight angle, and this allows the pigment to flow downward from the pull of gravity in water. Working carefully around those hard edges of the barn. I start the sky initially with ultramarine blue and then gradually add in a mix of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and Prussian blue. This adds a little more gray or neutral value to the sky area so that it isn't one homogeneous color. I'm paying attention from top to bottom to make it gradate from top to bottom, dark to light. So now we're going to move on to that middle ground where the horizon line meets the sky and the barn. I'm going to treat it much like I did the sky, in that I'm going to introduce a clear water glaze initially, and then over that I'm going to apply a glaze of azo yellow, allowing it to run downhill. Then I'm introducing more earth tones such as burnt sienna and the alizarin crimson, allowing them to mix and mingle and do their thing on the paper. This creates a much more visually compelling composition than trying to mix it all on the palette. Introducing some azo green and pyroline green. I'm letting those colors run down, doing their own little dance. Along the way, I also spray portions to allow the colors to run downhill. That clear water also creates a more textural effect. And then I also come back in and blot here and there with a tissue. It's a give and take at this point. Adding color, taking color out, adding water, taking water out. All an observational thing. The The more you do this kind of thing, the better you get at it. Experiment. Practice. Give yourself permission to be a kid again. That's the only way that you become comfortable with these materials and watercolor becomes less intimidating. Starting on the barn area, I'm going to use straight alizarin crimson mixed with water on the left-hand side, being the side more in light. And then to that mix, I'm going to add pyrroline green and make it a darker color for the side that is in shadow. For the trees and foliage area, I'm going to use a mix of azo yellow, azo green, and then incorporate pyrroline green, burnt sienna, and even some blue to it. I don't want it to be a solid color, and I want it to be lighter on the top edges and darker on the bottom. And I'll continue with this color and maybe even a little darker mix into the trunk areas of the trees as well. At this point, I'm going to start adding details into the barn area along those shadow edges where the roof meets the structure itself, and then even adding in the background fence line as well. For the foreground area, I'm going to keep it fairly impressionistic towards the abstract for now. And I'm applying just a variety of colors with darker pigments to achieve a textural contrast from the midground.
then be adding more details with a fine brush to create more of a goldenrod look.
Here you'll see where I start to add the fine detail of the goldenrod. Trying to get a feel with my brush. I want a nice loose, feathery feel. Using fairly dark pigment here and there, but then also light to show some closer, some further away. I'm not going to try to do it all in one fell swoop. I'll let that dry and then I'll come back and add even more details.
I'm going to dry my paper with a blow dryer completely. And then I'm going to start on some fine details on the barn with some dark paint consisting of the alizarin crimson and the perylene green. And then I'll move on to even darker pigment into the foreground areas.
Here let's add a little tone to the roof area so it isn't such a stark white. I'm going to start adding a little more detail to that foreground area, and by doing so, by building up the layers, it creates a better depth. With a heavier mix of pigment as opposed to water, I'm going to start adding in darker foreground details, still trying to keep it random with a big variety of color. This brings those objects closer to the eye.
I noticed that the barn needs more of a cast shadow, so I'm going to place that in along the right side of the barn. And also to set those trees back, I'm going to add a little tone along the line of the trees as well.
So there you have it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.